All right, good. Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Game Life Chronicles. Today, we have with us Russell Royale. And in this episode, we're going to chat about his experience as a gamer, a streamer, an enthusiast of nerd culture, right? Because, like, that's a lot of what we're into,
Absolutely.
right? He is into his DIY projects, and we'll explore, how he balances his love for gaming, streaming, and creating things with family life and all the other interests and how it's evolved over the years, okay? So we're going to delve into the joys and challenges of being an older gamer in a dynamic and ever-changing gaming landscape. Welcome, Russell.
No, it's great to be here, Spark. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. So when I get started, one of the main questions I always ask is like, how did you get into gaming? How did you get here?
Oh man, yeah. So I like to think that I grew up at just the right time. Like I was born at just the right time. You can even say that Star Wars: A New Hope was
Mhm.
launched like 10 months after I was born. So like I was really right in there when all that kind of say that nerd culture probably started and didn't know it. And so I have faint memories of playing video games. And the truth is, my sister is 5 years older than me. My brother's 10 years older than me. They never really got into video games, but for some reason, there were game stations around. Um, and I even remember my big brother had it like the little hand football games that weren't video. I mean, they weren't really video games. They were just more LED lights. And throughout this podcast, I have some things I can show. So, like this right here is the Merlin, and this is what like video games looked like in the 70s, right?
Oh my
So
God,
they were just a handheld station of lights and patterns
that's
and
really
puzzles.
cool.
And this is, of course, still in the original box, so it's highly collectible. Just kidding.
Nice.
But I have a lot of this old stuff because it's so nostalgic. But I do remember like this. My first game system was the Magnavox Odyssey 2.
Wow.
And it was a race car game that I played. And this was the game I played. And so I remember and I played it a lot. I barely remember playing it. And then got into, I remember, so a little bit of background about me and my upbringing. My parents got divorced when I was fairly young, about two.
Mhm.
And so I had, I'd go see my dad on the weekends, and I'd live with my mom and my stepdad. I don't like calling him my stepdad because he raised me my whole life, but and he was a preacher, so that's a whole other side of my upbringing, right? But but at my dad's, I had an Atari, and I don't even remember getting it.
Whoa.
I just had it, and I remember I've got really good memories of just playing Atari, um, and uh, and I don't know if there wasn't much else to do, when I was at my dad's house because I didn't really live there. I just
Yeah.
visited, and I mean I have good memories about it, but I really just played a lot of it. And so if you know me and my stream, I do what I call oddities, and I share collections that I have or whatever. So I've got a number of things we're going to look
Go
at
ahead.
today. So this right here um, is a boxed Atari. It
I
is
think
an
I have one.
original Atari that is still in the box.
That's
And so
awesome.
this was the station I really remember playing the most when I was little. And so my grandma and I would sit and play that game, and my dad would play, and mainly Pac-Man, Defender. Um, and I just growing up, I didn't have a much of a game station at home, like
Hmm.
because I played sports when I was little, and I was outside. We all kind of joke in our generation of like drinking from hoses out in the front yard, and your parents didn't want you in the house. So you had to
Yeah.
go outside, stay out there until dark, and then my mom would whistle in the back yard, and I would come out of the creek or wherever I was. So I had I still did a lot of outdoor things when I was little. Um, let's see. So as far as how I got into gaming, those are my early memories of gaming.
Hmm.
But and I've listened so far. I've listened to all your podcasts, and they've all been so fun to hear. Norin and Grapple Girl and Christian Sherm's experiences, because I mean, there's so much overlap.
Yeah.
but we were all like different ages, and of course, when you're younger, the age matters a bit. Are you 8 or are you 12 or are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's funny because Noren's a bit older than me. Grapple Girl's I think a bit younger than me. Um, and so it's just fun the differences there. But yeah, I think along the way I'll share items like funny things about Atari. Like you have your ET
Me
Atari game.
too.
It's
Oh my gosh.
famous for being the worst video game ever
I
created.
never played
Yeah,
it. I wanted
it's
to.
horrible. It's hardly playable. It's literally almost just it's the worst game ever. There's a documentary that's worth watching called Atari Game Over, and it talks about the creation of that game. But really funny stuff. Just great little lore and evolution of all of it. Um, and so that just, I guess that's what started it all.
Mhm.
And at that point in life, you could be like, okay, well, those are games, and we played football over here, and we did this over there. Well, then I think Nintendo hit, and I remember it popping into um, friends' houses. I didn't have one for a while. Yes, like I said, I grew up in my dad was a preacher, and we didn't make a lot of money, and so we didn't really have a lot of consoles or things until I got maybe into my teens.
Yeah.
But I did remember when I went over to a friend's house and I was enamored by it because we still have this fascination with robots. Like we're gonna have like robots walking around our house
Little
and stuff. I
robots.
think I think they even just launched a new robot. At like or Elon was talking about a
Yeah, the
robot or
Tesla
something.
robot.
Yeah, the what was his what's his name Optimus or something like that,
Yeah.
Prime or I don't know. Whatever. I like Optimus. But when I went over to my friend's house, they had a Rob the Robot. And when the first Nintendo launched, it had this robot with it, and it would spin these discs and stuff like that. And I truthfully never even saw the thing work. I don't think it even worked that great. It had a game cartridge that you would put in, and you would work this robot, and it would, its head would go up and down, and it would lift things and all that. I don't know, but I think the idea was pretty cool. It didn't work out, but I love having a Rob the Robot
It was the early times.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was early. But yeah, I think I remember going. We'd go vacation in Florida, and my mom. I was just kind of bored. It's kind of pathetic that I was bored in Florida at the beach, but I didn't have any friends there. It was just me and my parents, and my mom gave me an early birthday gift, and it was a Nintendo. And man, I don't think I ever looked back after that. I mean, played Nintendo forever. You go over to friends' houses, like, okay, well, it's not, do you have a Nintendo? It's like, what games do you have?
What
Like,
do you
do I need
have?
to bring games or what are we going to do? And, just getting immersed in that. Crazy things with the Nintendo, like the Power Glove. I mean,
Oh
this thing
wow.
was horrible. It, it was cool in that you could put it on your hand, but, and I still say, I was watching a movie the other day and they were, moving their hands around and moving these little 3-dimensional. I'm like, well, the mouse works really good. I mean, you move it 2 inches and it moves all the way across the screen. Gravity holds it to the desk. Holding your hand up in front of the TV lasted. You got some kids and you would just see them like trying to hold their arm up, and
Now you also have the VRs, right? Like you have
yeah,
the controller.
hmm yeah, the and those, man, that stuff is pretty intense. My son, and to jump forward, my son went off to college and left his Oculus, and so I'm thinking about heating that thing up soon.
Yeah, I've played with my Oculus a couple of times. It's
Yeah,
intense.
yeah, and so but I think the graphics started getting better.
Mhm.
The idea of Mario was kind of weird, like, well, what are these little characters doing? But then, of course, you're just immersed in all the different Marios that came out, and then kind of just the fandom that came with all the Marios and stuff was amazing. I did play a lot of Gradius on Nintendo One. It's just a little flying spaceship game,
Oh,
but what was crazy, and the screen would get very intense, almost like the game would slow down because too many things were moving on the screen at once. But if you use the NES Advantage and you pressed the slow button, it
hmm.
basically would pause and unpause the game really fast, so you could go in slow motion.
Oh.
And yeah, I beat Gradius with the NES Advantage. I guess it gave me so much advantage you might call it cheating, but I made it through it. Otherwise, I don't think I would have ever cleared that game. But you know, that was one of the funny things. Like I remember playing Atari Pac-Man so much, I had the pattern memorized, and I had a few alternate routes depending on where the ghosts were.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I would just have extra lives off the screen. Like I didn't know how many lives I had because the little dots at the top would just
Yeah.
go off the edge. And so I remember one, I literally can remember it like it was yesterday. I was like, I'm going to see how far I can make it. Cause I'd never really tried to just play until I was out of lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like 2 hours into it, my dad was still asleep. I, I had to go to the bathroom, and there's no pause button. So there's no way to stop the game.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how far I made it that day, but I do know I finally ended up having to go to the bathroom and break my streak of not dying. But you know, the fact that the Nintendo had a pause button was just like, that blew my mind. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is a total game changer. I can pause the
Absolutely.
game, go eat dinner, and then I can come
Come
back
back
and keep
to it.
playing. Yeah. So yeah, those are just some neat kind of stories and evolution of the Nintendo. You know, I think the cool thing about Nintendo is when they launched the Game Boy. Of course, I have a Game Boy that
Oh, I had a
grabbed at
Game
any
Boy
point in
too.
time. Yeah, and
Zelda.
yeah, like Zelda and Ninja Turtles on this, and of course, it
Ninja
came with
Turtle.
Tetris. And there's a great movie about Tetris, fascinating story about why Tetris ended up on the Game Boy. I also have a whoa, almost dropped it. A Game Boy in the box still.
What?
Haven't opened that one yet.
Jeez,
I
Louise.
don't know. Collect the craziest stuff.
That's
Um,
cool to collect, though.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny, as I was kind of preparing a few notes for our discussion. I It was funny how if you do a timeline on your gaming and then the timeline on your life, it's strange how it matches up. Um, you know, skipping forward pretty fast, like through all my game station journeys and how I got to be here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, had the Game Boy. I remember buying a Sega Genesis. I beat Sonic the Hedgehog and realized I didn't want the Sega Genesis anymore. Took it back. Got a Super Nintendo because my friends wanted to play this baseball game. Played that game way too much. I can still hear the sound, like the jingle, but still love the Super Nintendo. It was a great
Console.
one.
Yeah.
I remember, so as I was starting to like, you know, because, you know, my kids aren't really in a big rush to like drive cars, but when I was younger, like that was the key to your life. Like if you could just get your own car and be able to do your own
Yes,
thing,
that.
that was great. You know, there was no internet to connect with each other easily. So, driving a car was great. So, but yeah, so around that time, the PlayStation 1 came out, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember playing Resident Evil. And I think I remember Chris and Sherm talking about the memory cards on the PlayStation 1. I didn't realize that tech existed. So trying to play Resident Evil without a memory card was, I mean, it was crazy town. So finally got a memory card on that, made Resident Evil much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Um, but then, you know, about that time, I think I ended up getting my first laptop, which got me where I could install Doom on the thing, where you had like a bunch of different floppy disks, and Doom was a whole different kind of game. I mean, um, even down to what they named their weapons was so fun.
Yeah.
I was like, what? They can do that? You know, they can say that in a game. Um, but but yeah, and then I think I got a good job at an advertising agency, and they gave me this really powerful laptop. And about that time, my cousin on my wife's side was over at his house, and he was playing games on a PC. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know people really played, you know, games on
PC
PCs
game.
still or whatever. And he was got real into Counter Strike, and so I watched him play, and I'm like, well, you know, I've got that nice new work laptop. Maybe I could install it on there and it would run it. Because just at the time, I wasn't prepared to buy a nice PC
Yeah.
personally. You
Just for
know, like
gaming.
we had just probably had our first kid or something like that, um, and yeah, man, I dove into Counter Strike, and I was blown away that you could get in a lobby with all these other people that you knew, and maybe didn't even know them in person, which was kind of weird at the time, and and start playing these games in these little worlds and maps that they had built.
On
And
the work
you
computer,
know,
nonetheless.
yeah, on a work computer. And like part of me was like, do I need to uninstall this before I go back to work? Like, is the network gonna know? Like they weren't that advanced. But yeah, funny story about my Counter Strike days. I joined a clan of gamers for Counter Strike and
Hmm.
with my cousin, and we practiced and we had some tournaments and things like that. And I thought I got pretty good at Counter Strike for a guy playing with a laptop literally on his lap and a headset. Um, but our clan was named the Delta Clan, and everybody kind of thought, the Delta Force and all this stuff. And like, no, 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 it's we installed a server at Delta Dental's command center, and so for fun, we just named it the Delta because nobody would know. I don't know if you guys have Delta Dental wherever you're at, but I still have it. But
It's
yeah,
funny.
I can tell that story now because I think that guy's long gone. He doesn't work there anymore. But no, I always just crack up. I still cut up with my cousin about the Delta Clan because it's Delta Dental related. Played a lot of Unreal Tournament, which I think was my first dive into Epic.
Hmm.
Because I think that engine still is probably there's probably bits of that engine still in Epic's system or code base or whatever that brought us Fortnite later. But yeah, I loved Unreal Tournament, and that was getting real into sniping and stuff was real fun with Unreal Tournament. But just the fact that you could play with your coworkers on a network, and the games were really changing. I think on my first laptop, I remember dialing into my friend's laptop and we played Command and Conquer,
Yeah,
against each other just over phone line and or no, it's not phone line, old modems.
modems.
But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how far we've come. But yeah, and then I think you really went into a bunch of years where we're having kids. And it was a great time, um, and I focused on work. I did a lot of freelance work in the evening to kind of make up for maybe money I wasn't making at work,
Hmm.
or a vacation here or car there or whatever. And so I didn't game much at all. And I think at one point my wife was like, "Well, you always like playing video games. Would you want like an Xbox for Christmas or something?" And so I remember she got me this Xbox, but she got the cheaper version. So immediately I had to go out and buy the Wi-Fi connector, the extra controller. I ended up spending like all my Christmas money on the rest of the
The
system.
Egbert, yeah.
Um, but I played, got into Gears of War at that time. Played some. Oh, what was it with my coworkers? Halo. I think Halo 2 had
Oh,
come
Halo.
out,
Yeah.
so I was playing a lot of that. And um, I think in general in my life, I've always been curious how things are built. So I like the construction side of it and the nuts and bolts, but I've always been very creative and aesthetic. And so I like the way it looks and I like the way it makes you feel. And I haven't been very like read. I don't read a lot. I think if I were to grow up nowadays, I would, well, I know I've got dyslexic issues, probably, ADD type stuff, just having a hard time focusing on one given thing at a time. um, so growing up with that, the video games really, and I think Grapple Girl really said it well in her episode. It really helped her settle down when she would get stressed at school or something like
Yeah.
that. And I think video games helped me, um, visually use my reflexes and just get my mind off the other things. And so I think that's why I always kind of gravitated to games. And I
Hmm.
think I still do. I think at the end of the day, after a long day's work, some days you're dead and you just don't want to do anything. But other days you're like, no, I'll get on here and,
Yeah, and it's
you know,
relaxing.
yeah, it is. And, but I think with kids, it started a whole new generation of my gaming life because all of a sudden, we got a Wii for the family, where we would play
Yeah.
games together, and we were standing up and playing tennis or ping pong or whatever it was. Um, and so the Wii was pretty fun in that regard. I think I still have like a stack of like 4 Wii's that I went through
Hmm.
trying. I don't know why we would have multiple Wii's, but I have a hard time throwing all my old game stations away.
Yeah.
Um, and then a funny kind of parenting thing that happened. My middle son was the one who really gravitated towards games, and he had an iPad at that time. So at that
Mhm.
time, let's see, the iPad had it happened. I've got a few Apple devices worth showing. This was the iPod with the
Yeah,
wheel.
I
So
had
sorry
that
that
one.
that exposure is kind of bad, but yeah, you get the iPod, and then of course the first iPhone, iPhone
It's the
one.
first
It's
one.
tiny. Like look how
Yeah,
tiny it is compared to the current phones.
yeah.
But but anyhow, yeah, I mean the Apple devices started hitting, but I saw that my son was playing Clash of Clans, and I didn't know what Clash of Clans was. But what caught my eye one time is he was chatting, and I'm like, whoa, 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 like who are you chatting with? And he's like, well, people in the game, and I'm
What?
like, whoa, like do we know these people? And he's like, well, some of them, I'm like. Well, okay, and so I think it hit me really fast that I had to figure something out as far as because social media had began
Hmm.
to emerge when they were little kids, and but that was kind of my first dive into okay, I gotta watch exactly what they're you know looking at online,
Talking
who they're
to.
talking to,
Yeah.
and all that. So my answer was to hop into Clash of Clans and create my own clan so I could control the, the chat per se,
Hmm.
and they were out of Clash of Clans within 6 months. I'm still playing it 10 years, 12 years later. And I mean, it's crazy. So like if you do come to my stream, it's every once in a while I'll play some Clash of Clans. It's not now that they have a PC version, it makes it easy to stream, but it's a fun game, and I do like games that allow you to build over time. It's not like you're starting over each time. Like
Yeah,
I still have the same base I started that day when I started playing Clash of Clans, and so
I do like
that's a
games.
fun mobile game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
um,
hear you mentioned streaming, right? And so
yeah,
right now,
yeah,
like streaming is a really big part of your life. How did you get started streaming?
yeah. So I think I think in my career, I started with it. I got an MIS degree, and I started building websites right out of
Okay.
high
Hmm.
school, right out of college, and and websites were the new thing. Like, why do we need a website? You have to go talk to a business, convince them they needed a website, and then to make this story real fast, I then found myself convincing people they needed to use email for marketing, and then I had tried to convince people that they needed social media and that social media wasn't just posting photos of food. And, and so through my career, I've been, I don't want to say at the forefront, that's probably a little too grandiose, but I have seen all these different digital tools that we use for marketing or for communications evolve. And what was interesting about streaming for me is as I picked up gaming a little bit more hardcore about 5 or 6 years ago, um, the technology and the communications tools were now there. It wasn't
Yeah.
just you gamed over here and you did work over here. So I'm like, so people are watching people play games. And I'm like, this is kind of lame. Why would you do that? And then I'm like, okay, so I started playing. So let's jump into it, right? Spark. I mean, Fortnite hits.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to some coworkers about Fortnite. They're like, it's going to be a big game. And I'm like, we'll see, and sure enough, there it is. My kids want to play it. It's free to play. Ah, great. It's going to be cheap. It's probably the most expensive game of my life at this point. Um, but so I got real into Fortnite. I didn't even have a gaming PC. I started using my son's PC that I'd gotten him, and he was getting mad because I was always using his PC. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll build my own PC. And so built my own PC. But so as I played, I'm like, well, how did these guys do this? How did they get so good? And so I started watching Ninja. I'm like, oh, so I can actually watch the best gamer, per se,
Per se.
play play the game. So I'll do that. And so I started watching Ninja on Twitch and a few other guys. And I mean, I was fascinated that these guys they're showing their game. They've got their video camera. They've got redemptions and ways that they can interact and have this quirky world with their own set of people that like watching them play. and to me, it's like the perfect mixture of like communications and technology
Hmm.
into this video game world that's always been nothing but 100% fun in my life. And so I'm like, well, I could sit here and play Fortnite with people that I enjoyed playing with, but kind of like Clash of Clans, I like adding on to things and building something along the way.
Yeah.
Like let's make it more worthwhile, and let's just start streaming. And I don't know if people are interested in, sometimes I think I can get a little boring on my stream because I don't talk nonstop, or I'm not screaming and yelling into the camera, or I'm not dancing in the background or anything like that. I'm just kind of who I am.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like, I know in real estate, there's a house for everybody. And you drive by those weird houses. Well, somebody's in that house and they
Somebody's gonna
love
buy
it.
it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
love that thing. And so, so no, I think there was a time as I was, trying to set up a camera and figure out OBS, and then I, you know, had one computer, didn't know if it was powerful enough to do all this, and I'm like, do I really dive into this? Because I mean, to get the gear and to really dedicate the time, it's going to take some time, and I wasn't really sure if it was for me. Like, are
Hmm.
there really is this just a younger thing? Did I miss the window? I hate thinking like that, but that's kind of where
Reality
I
of it.
started thinking. Yeah. And then I stumbled across, a streamer, and I don't even know that he streams much anymore, but, his name was is Edgy. And he was family friendly. I don't know that Edgy was necessarily family friendly, but he was very responsible with the
Hmm.
Twitch community, very responsible with young kids, making sure everyone was the right age that came in. And I just found that very okay. That adds a layer of responsibility to this that seems structural to me,
Yeah.
um, because one thing I have to take into account is if I put anything personal out online, and we've all seen the horror stories of people saying the wrong things online, doing
And then it's
and
over.
and then it's just over. And I'm in church leadership in one side. I have a professional career at a large organization over here on this other side. If I'm going to do all this, I really need to make sure that I do it responsibly. And so that's kind of, so between watching, Edgy, getting some encouragement from him, um, and, and just seeing how it could really be done. And then, uh, kind of mapping out how I would do it, it really came together. And I mean, I don't know if, we're all going to be famous, or anything like that, but I don't know that that's really the goal. Um, Going back to in my career when I was talking about email marketing, I spent a lot of time going to conferences about email marketing and
Hmm.
strategies about email marketing. And someone said something that really stuck with me in that world. Um, and it pertains to, when do you just kind of start gathering a list of emails? And someone said, well, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And so that means, yes, you need to start gathering your list so that when you're ready to send an email, you've got a list to
You
send
got it.
to.
Yeah.
And so for me, I started to just see this world of content creators as my kids have gotten into their teens. They don't watch TV and movies like I do. They watch streamers, they watch YouTube, they watch reels.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to create a world where, I could be a content creator, or I could just play games for fun, using some of these new tools and just see where it takes us, I better go ahead and plant the tree. And so I'm like, let's dive in. And so that's kind of why I did. I'm like, I don't know really where it's leading, but I've got a good foundation that I've built over the
In
last
the
2 years. And
community.
I've met some outstanding people that I really think are close friends at this point. I see them almost every night.
Yeah.
And then people like, you and Grapple Girl hop in to the community, and then share your friends with us. And it just gets bigger. You meet all these crazy people from around the world. I think we met Frank, who's in Hawaii
Hawaii.
shooting photography. I've got Kid Cadoto in the Netherlands that stops by. Even though my stream happens at 4 a.m. for him, he still stops by. And I'm like,
Right.
that means a lot to me, that this happens like this. And I think we've all got that thing in common. So those are a number of things that I didn't expect finding out when I started the streaming thing. And I didn't really expect how strong the community would be of people that we're all kind of different. We're from different parts of the world and country, but like we like Super Mario Brothers, and we love playing Fortnite,
Yeah.
and we like pop culture, and so it's really been cool to see a community come together, or not come together really, but just uh,
Grow.
assemble, you know,
Hmm.
and keep growing. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's kind of what got me into streaming and what I've learned. I will say that unfortunately, when you kind of you draw your line in the sand of having a family friendly stream, there were a number of people that I still love to game with when I can, but they just aren't necessarily on board with family friendly. Like they're not really willing to stop, you know, just cussing up a storm or whatever. And to me, it's just a bit unfortunate because like we have so much fun gaming. I just can't have certain content
On the
that
stream. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was one of the things that was a bit tough, is going, man, I absolutely love gaming with this person. I love knowing about him. I still send him messages and DMs here and there, just checking in on him and all that. And we play here and there where we can, but it's not as if it was when we used to play like every other day, you
Hmm.
know? So those are just some things to expect, I think, depending on what kind of stream you want to have. Um, that was a lesson that I didn't see being as difficult. Honestly, it almost took a year to evolve the stream to be able to accept that reality that maybe I'm just not going to be able to game with these people,
Yeah.
and that happened. So yeah, that's maybe a little nugget I'll throw out there. That's the the downer side of it, but I think it was worth it's been worth the community that's come together, and I think it's worth the responsible aspect of what I've been doing as a streamer, and honestly, it's good for me as a person, just finding folks that build each other up, and it's not a big, you know, roasting each other all the time, and do that. We give each other a hard time, but it's all in obviously good fun. So
Yeah.
I come out of streams better than I go into them each day. I think I come
Yeah.
out
Just
refreshed
make
a
you
bit.
feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I could see in the background your statue in the back there. And so let's talk a little bit of like, how did you get into, the nerd culture, the collecting, that stuff? Like, how
Oh
did you?
man, yeah. You know, I think about it a lot. You know, first off, people say, "Well, you got a lot of stuff." I'm like, but I collect. You know, I'm not a because some people have a lot of stuff and they're hoarders. Other
Yeah.
people have a lot of stuff and they're collectors. And I think it's the people that love displaying their items are collectors. I think if you have situations where you're, you know, hiding all this stuff in the closet, yeah, it might be a hoarder. So it's just a good way of understanding, like, hey, which one am I? But yeah, I
It's like
love
having
displaying.
multiples of one thing. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I've been putting together a new stream room, and all my cases back here are going to have lights in them so you can see all your stuff. It's the last piece that I haven't completed, but yeah, so I mean, I think just growing up with things like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and the list goes on, you know, um, I think I'm just a nostalgic person. And so a lot of the things like you've seen, I mean, I had a NES Advantage when I was little. I had a Power Glove when I was little. I went and got another one. So I needed to touch it and
yeah.
see it and remember it and be able to glance over there and go, oh, that was fun, you know? And I think, you know, you go to that Marie Kondo approach of, does it spark joy?
This
Does
is
it
spark
spark joy
joy.
when you see it? Yeah, you know, look at my Power Glove sparks a little joy in a day that may not be full of joy every hour or
Hmm.
second of it, you know. And so yeah, I mean, I just kind of grew up in it, and I have witnessed friends that, yeah, they grew up at the same time I did, but they go out and golf, and you know, it just seems just not super. And like golf's fine. I golfed my dad a little bit when I was younger, but like I do just prefer the fun uh, nerd stuff that we get to see. It's fun, and I think deep down I really like to have a lot of fun and humor in my day. I think
Hmm.
it makes it all worthwhile. But getting all serious and all that, I'm not into it. Plus, I think I love creativity,
Hmm.
and as I guess as an adult, I start to piece apart, like, how did George Lucas come up with all this Star Wars stuff? What are the strange stories behind it? And so I do love going and finding out, you know, a lot of that, you know, that maybe a kid doesn't care about. and I didn't care as a kid, how they did all of it. But I think just, the creativity side, how do you think up these stories and these characters and their names and their wardrobes and their lightsabers?
It's
And
a complete like world. It's a whole
it
world.
is. And you can go as deep into it as you want to. And it's just pretty fascinating. And so yeah, I do have a lot of like antique stores I go to. And I was there and I see this stormtrooper and I'm like, what is this thing doing here? And I think they had marked it like $15 or something. Like it's worth way
What?
more than that. So like I got it. And so I think
Of
people come
course
to
you
the
got it.
stream. Yeah, they like seeing the stormtrooper better than me. The truth is, I think my stream is more famous for me just not being in it. Sometimes I'll hit,
Cheers.
yeah, turn the stream on, and I'll walk away for 2 hours and come back, and I've, had 20 gifted subs, and but but yeah, but no, and that's why I just say, what was a good example? If you've seen the new Deadpool movie,
Hmm.
um, it's so chock full of pop culture references from people older than me to, you know, 12 years old. And now it's not for 12-year olds. It's not, not a family friendly movie, but, but I was talking with my sons and I'm like, you don't even understand like the significance of that. Like when he opened up to NSYNC's song in the dance. Yeah. And I'm like, you guys don't even know where that song came
Y'all
from. And
don't
I
get
was
it.
talking to somebody on my stream, and I'm like, you don't even understand like where that song came from.
How it had us
Like,
in a
so
chokehold.
yeah, and so
Mhm.
it's just so funny if you when all the different things click, and it's just so funny when all that pop culture, all your knowledge and life of pop culture comes together and you get it, and it's just fun.
It
So
always like I forget that a lot of these things are the younger generation don't know. So
yeah,
one of my kids was like, "Oh, that song from Deadpool," and I'm like, "You mean it? Like
yeah.
you only know it from Deadpool?"
Yeah,
Okay.
I was watching The Floor with my wife and daughter last night, and one of the answers was Ariana Grande, and I looked at my daughter and I go, "Oh, it's the girl from Fortnite." So I kind of reversed it on her,
Yeah.
because there's like these famous memes. We were at Universal, and the stormtroopers walk by, and you're like, "Oh, look, it's the guy from Fortnite." No, it's a Star Wars character. But it is funny, and I think that's one of the things that I can't get over about Fortnite is how they can just bring anything into
Everything.
this world,
Mhm.
and like just debates every year about which characters they're going to bring in for Halloween, and it's just there's always something next with it, and
May the
it's
force be with you.
yeah, and I was talking with Norrin recently, and well, we talked with Norrin a lot about you like the movie Ready Player One. It's a similar
Love
experience
that.
to the game of Fortnite, where it's just
Love the
all
book.
these things are all there, and you just the more you look, the more you find, and some stuff I don't really pick up on, but other people would. It's great.
Yeah.
It's the good stuff in life, is what I always tell my friends. It's the fun stuff. It's not the harsh reality that we all have to deal with in our own little journeys, but yeah, um, so yeah, that's kind of the pop culture side of me. I also collect. Oh, I was looking at. I also collect like skateboards. When I was younger, I was into skateboarding. Like I said, I would go outside um,
That's
and
interesting. I didn't.
I
Yeah.
had a family friend built me a ramp that was to the specs I gave him. Although I didn't realize how big I gave him, and but anyhow, I skateboarded a lot when I was younger. But it's funny when I look back, I think I actually liked the culture of skateboarding more
More
than
than
actually
skateboarding.
skateboarding. I love the artwork on the boards. So I still collect some of the boards that I had when I was younger, because the artwork. I'm like, man, who designed all this? What's the
Yeah.
story behind all this? And there is a documentary I was watching. Just had hip surgery, so I was catching up on a lot of TV watching, and
Mhm.
I watched a documentary on the artwork and the evolution of artwork on skateboards and how it came to be. It's really fascinating. Fascinating stories about how all those artists. They interviewed all those artists and things, and so I think as the designer side of me, I in my career I've done some design, and I still do design. I do most of the designs for my stream and all that stuff because I
Yeah.
love it. And um, but I really think that maybe some of those early design curiosities came from my skateboarding time, just wondering how did they print this on this board, and how did, and there's one specific board that's got a design, and I can't remember, it's like a fist or something, but it like the guy had 6 boards he released over years, and the fist kept changing and evolving into this big monster or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, that's just brilliant. Why not? Why have different designs when you could evolve one? So I just, some of those ideas and just the way that people can be so creative with this, just, I love it.
Yeah,
And so I think when things have a creative aspect to it and a technical aspect to it and a construction aspect to it, I love it when it all comes together.
that's really
And
cool.
it's done that. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I do have a lot of like World War II items that are a bit crazy. And I don't know why. I just think when you go to a museum um, and like, well, the museum has that, but could you go buy one of those? Like, well, maybe. So anyhow, so I'll go to an antique store and there'll be this giant, bomb down here, and I'm like, well,
What?
that'd look cool in my house. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a museum. And so I just like, nobody else has one of those. I'll get one. I guess I
What
just like
are
the
you going
craziness.
to? Like,
Right. It's empty. It doesn't have any, it's not going to blow up.
this I need to wherever you're antiquing. That's where I need to go because for real.
Yeah. You just never know, man, what you're going to find at some of these places. But yeah, I find stuff that I think is super interesting and that you just don't see very often.
Hmm.
And kind of get curious about that. But then, of course, I have those nostalgic items that I've shown you a lot of that they just bring back crazy memories. So that little bomb, big bomb right here, doesn't really give me great memories. I
That's the
think it's
cool
just a
thing.
unique item.
Hmm.
But then other things hold a lot of value. And then there's other things that that like I always tell my kids, like I collect like little ammunition shells of all the different, either big ones, small ones, fake ones, practice ones, all that. And but my granddad had one on his desk when I would go to his office when I was real little. He died when
Hmm.
I was younger, but he had one, and I think because I saw it and I was so curious about his that I've collected more.
Okay.
It's the only thing I can really think of as to why those things draw to me. But there are some like where I talk to my kids. I'm like, now this one, if you can just remember, this one's the one that was your great granddad's. All these other ones you can just sell someday, or I can just sell someday. But we're
Yeah.
always going to keep granddad's, because I don't know. As long as I can pass that on to him, I will. I try to. And I go to these antique stores or sales with my kids, and I'm like, well, how much is this worth? And try to see if they can gauge, how much something might be worth or valued at. And then I'm like, was this real or is this a remake? And my daughter's good; she's the best at it.
Really.
Yeah, but yeah, we have fun with it, and I'm always kind of curious. They're just going to think the old man's gone crazy with this item, and so part of that's just trying to shock them into some of that. But yeah, that's part of my collecting and things, you know. And I think as our podcast here talks a lot about how do you balance things. I
Hmm.
even have a sports fandom. I'm really big with I'm from Oklahoma, so I love the University of Oklahoma football.
Hmm.
um, and I've done social media for them. I've collected signing autographed items for OU. And there's a lot of little aspects in life where it's hard to balance which ones you're a fan of. But I think you just ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You're into it, great, but you don't have to be into it forever. If it's not sparking that joy, then
Get rid of
go to
it.
something else. Yeah, get rid of
Hmm.
it, go to something else.
So how do you balance it, right? So you're having multiple hobbies. It can be challenging. How are you managing your time between like the gaming, the streaming, your hobbies, general life?
Yeah. You know, I think I think the best thing that I can share about that is um, you can overwhelm yourself trying to do too much, and I think you need to
Yeah.
know when you're overwhelming yourself. I think it's best to understand that and go, well, wait, let's stop. And so, like, I think, for example, my work got real busy about 6 months ago, and I just wasn't able to keep up with I was able to stream, but I wasn't able to do all the prep work. If you come to my stream, I try to do these monthly passes where I have giveaways. Haven't been able to do those for about 3 months. I'm hoping to do a holiday version through November and December. But it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of calculation on different challenges you're going to build yourself or whatever. And so I thought, I'm not going to let that stress me out. If this is for fun and I'm not going to ruin gaming because I've put too much responsibility on me. And, and so I'm like, sorry guys, there's no monthly pass this month. I promise we're going to do more, but I'll tell you when we have them. And, there's always a way. And I think everybody's been very understanding that sometimes life gets just a little crazy. And so,
Yeah, you have a lot going on and you can't like
yeah,
something has to fall at some point. It's
yeah.
best it's something that's not like gonna affect too much.
Yeah. I also think that those are, the streaming, gaming, that's a hobby. I think there's also other responsible aspects of life, and part of one of the things that I'm passionate about and is giving back to my church with my time. And so I'm on a leadership group at church, and growing up in the church, my dad was a pastor. I just kind of have, I guess, decent amount of experience in church management and in the pitfalls of that and how to keep that balance. But I guess I can say that I don't like enjoy it like I enjoy streaming, right? But it's something I feel that is a responsibility that I think my dad would be proud of me that I do that. I think that's part of just being a Christian, that I would do that for my church. And sometimes I'm like, man, I just, I'd rather not do this. But I'm like, but no, just because it's not fun or just because I'm not getting what I want out of it, doesn't mean that it's not just responsible to do that. So I think there are just some things that if you feel are the right thing to do, that you should block off a little bit of your life to dedicate to those things. And honestly, some of my church leadership time has been some of the more difficult times of my life. They're really difficult decisions, um, but somebody has to do it, and everything can't be video games and streaming. If you want to have like this, I don't want to say well-rounded, but a balanced life where you're giving back, and instead of just taking in all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I went to Israel with my dad many years ago,
Hmm.
and we visited the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is a really weird place. It's like
Okay.
it's below sea level, right?
Hmm.
And it's got a high salt content, so not a lot lives in it at all. And it has no output. And so he was making this illustration in life that nothing can live in this water because it doesn't give out, it only takes in. And so
Hmm.
I never wanted to be the Dead Sea, right? I always wanted to kind of give back to my community,
Yeah.
give back to my church, give back to my family. And then and that way I can receive also. And so yeah, that's another great example, I think, of just um, of balancing those things, even though they might not be fun. Gosh, I think having kids was great, but as you know, it's a grind. And I think I can't imagine trying to like stream or whatever with a crying baby or any of that. It
And
just
you
would be
don't,
very
right? Like
difficult.
you might
Yeah.
have to wait till they go to sleep. So now you're into the 9, 10 p.m.
Yeah.
at night and now you're tired.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. Now you're cutting into all your time. And,
hmm.
and so I think luckily, I mean, I've come out of the other end of having kids. My youngest is 16, and she does everything on her own. So she
Yeah.
doesn't need me. She's the one that'll always walk into the stream and she'll go, "Good night, Dad." And she does it because she needs me to go, "Good night." She needs me to, acknowledge her. And like, so it's one of our things, but yeah, I just think, having a balanced life is difficult. I haven't mastered it or anything, but I keep trying, and I make adjustments here and there. And, and I think, there's a lot of time. I think also I've got an established career.
Hmm.
I think for a lot of time, I was up till 2 in the morning doing freelance work for probably 10, 15 years of my career, just trying to supplement for and learn new tools and,
Yeah.
and all this. And so I don't have to do that anymore like I once did. So I do have the time to put into a streaming or a gaming. Otherwise, I'll just be sitting watching TV the whole time, and that's not as productive as I like to
Yeah,
be, you
yeah.
know. So so yeah, I think as far as having a balanced life, just balancing all these different things. I've gotten into a good rhythm. It's funny, my two boys are away at college, and there are times where I'm like, boy, it's kind of quiet around here, you know? And so I'm really glad that I have streaming and that I have our community of people all over the globe, because I can always heat up a stream and play some games, not just with myself. That's kind of lonely, but with people that are also in their own little spot in the world. And I tell you, I've met some friends online that are real good friends in real life. I've met some of them in person. I had one guy that I met playing Fortnite. We've ran 2 half marathons together here in Oklahoma City. He just got married. He shared me his wedding pictures. I mean, it's just amazing that I really have met some pretty amazing folks. Got there's one guy I met, and he was getting real nervous about getting out of college. Like, what do I do? I got to get a career, and so I just kind of helped him, through some of those decisions. And he's doing really great, doing some sports vlogging for fantasy football, and he's doing some sports writing and all this stuff. And so it's fun. I mean, I've met some of these kids when they're in high school, and now they're done with college into
Else.
careers,
Oh
and
God.
just it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, now I'm just, of course, a quirky friend of theirs. But they know that sometimes I'll be like, hey, I know we always just play Fortnite, but how would you handle this in real life? And I was always told, if somebody's willing to just dish out a bunch of advice to you, it's probably not the advice you should
It
take.
probably.
And so I never want to be the guy that just throws out advice, but if they ask, I'll tell them at least what I've been through in life. And
Yeah.
so it's pretty fun. Pretty fun watching all that happen.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
It's nice having that community and that, that time to connect with people without, and it's a low lift because it's like you not have to leave your house. You don't have to drive somewhere and come
Oh
back.
yeah.
So it's a low lift with good output.
Yeah. I give my mother-in-law a hard time. She's always like, I just think we should play board games. And I'm like, well, that's great, but like you have to be here in order to play a board game. And what if, my son wants to play, but he's in a different town, so he can't play. And it's just a little restrictive for me to just
Yeah.
play a board game. Not that there's anything wrong with board games. It's just,
I
I
love
feel
board.
like, yeah, I feel like we're kind of playing board games. It's just we have to connect because one of us happens to live in London,
Yeah.
and so it's to me it's very similar. I do think there's something intimate about playing a game with family,
Yeah.
just in the living room, and that's great. And we still do that, but I kind of
It's not
think that they're
viable
more of the same.
all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Boy, we've covered a lot of stuff here. I literally was listing out all my types of collections, and I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on my sneaker collection.
Oh,
You
let's
know,
go.
from being growing up where everybody wanted to be like Mike, and so I tell you, every Jordan 4, every Jordan 5, every Jordan 11 that
Ooh,
comes
let's
out,
go.
I got to go get them. And so I've got got quite the sneaker collection, and I'm hoping that as I continue to show the community that I can get older and still be a nerd and all that. I can't wait to be that, you know, 60, 70-year-old guy with brand new pair of Jordan 4s on,
Oh, nice. I
Yes,
did
that's one of
this.
my goals.
There's this group I work with. It's like big picture learning, and their CEO, much older guy. His shoes, his sneakers are always the hottest one. Like
Oh yeah.
he's a
Yep.
sneaker guy. It's cool.
Yeah. My work right now, I have to wear a suit to work,
Mm,
and oh, it is painful. And so I would love someday to be able to wear my sneakers to work and be comfortable and make a statement at the same time.
yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of get old and boring looking. Like I sit at work and I've got this tie on, and I'm like, you guys have no idea what I did last night in my stream. I dressed up like a pirate because somebody redeemed the Jack Sparrow, whatever. And but here I just look so boring. But I think it is kind of telling, like, to be able to just express yourself, and maybe the clothes you wear or whatever
Hmm.
might
Absolutely.
show my youth. Might show my youth, even though I am having my hip replaced and getting older. You know.
That's awesome. Are there any other things you wanted to show us that you didn't get to show us?
Let's see. Oh, I've got so many things. I will say the last thing that I had that I didn't talk about was my first computer that I had. And another boxed item is the Commodore 64, where the computer was in the keyboard. So this
What?
is the computer. And I actually have a T-shirt I sell in my merch store that's the Commodore 64 logo, because it was my first computer. But I played. I was telling TZ that a guy that we play with. I played golf. The first golf game I ever played was on a Commodore 64, and you have to, you know, execute the game from the command line and stick the floppy disk in,
What?
and all that. And I don't that one I don't even think connected to the web. That was before the internet. I think that's my first and last computer that did not connect to the internet. Um, but yeah, man. No, so I do have things that aren't in boxes. Just lots of I got into remote control cars at one point in time. I have a few of my old remote control cars. I just love I love being able to watch the evolution of things. And and I was thinking of it. um, I think as people talk about being an older, and I guess as I can close here, as we talk about talking to older gamers and having this kind of life legacy of things. When I still remember it, I think in my generation, you can ask people, where were you when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded? And I remember I was in like third grade,
Hmm.
and we were watching it in the classroom.
Well,
And I just remember kind of the teachers turned those TV off and we all went outside. And it's like, okay. Um, it's crazy. but if you think about to what we saw earlier this week, was it, or this weekend, where they landed that
landed
rocket,
it. That was cool.
and I'm like, that's pretty intense. But I don't know, that rocket's about as tall as a football field is long. I mean, that
Yeah,
is a gigantic rocket. And
that's
so
a piece of machinery.
it's yeah, it's just so, I mean, we can get stuck in where we are right now, but man, we're probably going to see those rockets coming down a couple times a day in 10 years or 5 years
Yeah,
or whatever. And so it's just amazing to watch these small innovations we have each day, but how they just repeat themselves, and just become a part of life in 5 years or 10 years, or who
yeah,
knows. So um, so yeah, that's one thing, is I think even though something small might have happened or changed in a technology, or in space travel, or in vehicles or robots or whatever, um, you give it a few years and it could become the next crazy thing that's a whole way of life for us.
that is
It's
true.
just like when the iPhone happened. I was showing my daughter a video of Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone, and he was showing on the phone how you slide your finger across that little button and it unlocks the phone. He goes, because you don't want it to unlock while it's in your pocket. And she was just cracking up at how kind of dumb it was. And I'm like, but no one had
That
ever
was
seen
innovative.
it.
That was
Yeah, no one had ever seen that.
finest.
And now you just look at your phone and it turns on. Um, but we make these baby steps, but boy, they all start stacking together real fast as you get older and time starts
Yeah,
to speed up. And next thing you know, you've got more processing power in your pocket than NASA had in the 80s. So anyhow, I just think there's some really neat things with getting older and being able to look back and watch all these great things that we've accomplished. So
that's pretty cool.
yeah.
So, what advice do you have to any older gamers who are interested into maybe getting into streaming?
Yeah. I think that it, I'll tell you, what's really an interesting, what I found pretty interesting about streaming is I got on Twitch and started streaming with zero followers, with zero people, friends, anybody,
Hmm.
and was streaming to my nephew basically for 4 or 5 months. And it took a long time to get to an affiliate status. but then, and I think it was Noren's episode 2 of your
Yep. Mhm.
podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Um, what was funny is Noren. I met Noren in I think Reasonable Dad's stream, and Noren knew so many people. When Noren started streaming, he was an affiliate within a couple
2 weeks.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was because he had that community, and so I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, first I need a microphone or first I need a camera. Well, no, I think first you need to just go meet some great
People at
people
Twitch.
and people
Exactly.
that are like you, and then it will all fall into place. It's like uh with you and Grapple Girl. I think you guys came in and found our community, and of course, everybody. I think you'd be amazed at how many streamers really want to help other streamers get
Yeah.
going, and look at you guys now. I mean, it's great watching your community just grow, and the B team keeps growing, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. So yeah, I think the biggest advice is, I mean, number one, you'll know if you're really into Twitch or not if you hang out there
Yeah.
enough, and you're
Hmm.
going to find people that you're interested in, and people that maybe you're not interested in, and then meet their friends and spend some time just meeting some people. It's almost better usage of time doing that than trying to stream and just
You
hope
never do
people
it.
find you.
Yeah.
You know, because I think I actually kind of did it the hard way, versus versus that. And I way underestimated the power of the community of Twitch and just gamers in general. So I think that would be one piece of advice. And then the other piece is that, you may have to kind of, I don't want to say disassociate from friends. That sounds really bad, but there might be friends that just don't make it over to your stream. You know, and I've had some friends that kind of changed a little bit about their ways just because they wanted to be in my stream or just be in my games. And then others that just kind of said, he'll go do that, and I'll just keep doing this over here. So there might be some, because I tried to force the square peg in a round hole, and probably added on a 6 months of time to getting where I needed to be, because I was trying too hard to make all of it fit. So there might be some folks that just don't make it along with you, or just don't have the same goals, and that's fine, because I mean, you're the one streaming, not them. But you just want to play. It's hard to separate the group you play with to streaming it. That
Extremely
might
group.
be two separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then, I mean, I think you can get a little overwhelmed with all the graphics and with all the technology and things. Like, I have a 2 PC streaming setup that's a bit of a mess, but it also has saved me several times from losing a stream. There's nothing worse than getting all ready to stream, and maybe you get a few raids, maybe you finally got 10 people watching you, and then the stream dies,
Goes
and
down.
you're like, I am just so mad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can make it as difficult or as easy and simplistic as you want to. And also, there are people out there that want to. I can't believe that, like, Norin helps me so much with my stream, and I should do so much more for him and Shadow and Brookie Wookie. Those are my mods that help me, and they come and hang out every night. And it's I just never thought I would meet someone that would want to do that, but they sure do, and it's pretty amazing. So don't underestimate people, and the things that they want to help out with, just for the sake of meeting new people and helping out. There's people that want to mod, they don't want to stream,
Yeah.
and not everybody wants to stream. So I think those are some solid little nuggets that I wish I could have told myself about 3 years ago. And
Yeah.
again,
Hindsight.
best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. So if you're thinking about streaming, you better go ahead and get started,
That's
because the world's still moving. I tell you, and as painful as COVID was, I sure wish I had been streaming during that time, because it sure would have
yeah.
been a productive use of time when everybody didn't have anything else to do. And
Yeah.
I kind of kicked myself for that, but who knew, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are some great things I think that might help some older streamers, and there are some rules. Just you want to make sure that people are 13 or over if they're going to be using their voice, and you don't want people telling all
Yep.
their personal information. So you might read up on some of those best practices, for so you don't fall into any weird situations. I'm pretty good about it, but I could probably be even more read up than I am on it. But I think there's some of those fears that also can slow you down. Like, I don't want to get into any of that, but there's solutions for all of it. And I've learned a lot just by watching folks like Reasonable Dad. He's always really good about enforcing his rules with still a great sense of humor,
Yeah.
in a quirky way. You don't have to be this dictator or whatever that's trying to, like, this is my world, you're going to obey my rules when you come into it. It's not that. It's more just like, I can't do that, man. Don't want to do, so yeah, there's a lot of good tips there. I think that specifically for older streamers, but I mean, we've been around these games a lot, and I hope the community of older gamers, keeps growing and doesn't diminish,
Yeah.
and I think it will. I think games are just getting more accessible, and streaming's getting easier, and it's all starting to connect more and more. So
Absolutely.
I've really enjoyed it. Really glad I started, and I just wouldn't trade some of the people I've met for anything. So
That's good.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, like, thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on this. It's been great. And I did spend some time. I had listened to Grapple Girl and Noren's podcasts a while back, and I listened to Chris and Sherm, I think, even just, and listen, it's so fun to listen to each different streamer, gamer, their stories. I think you could just keep doing these episodes and tell different stories from different folks.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a great idea, and I'm anxious to listen to more of them.
Yeah, the stories of the people, it's interesting to me, and I think streaming is really what brought that out for me, because a lot of times, people, when you first get into someone's streams, they introduce themselves and you're like, oh, you couldn't tell that. Oh, that's really cool. And it's nice hearing a story, right? Because we all have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You're right. All right, so thank you for being with us. And guys, thank you for listening to Game Life Chronicles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Game on.